Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling inexplicably guilty or confused, as if something was off, yet you couldn't quite put your finger on why? Imagine realizing that the feelings you're experiencing aren't a natural part of who you are, but rather a carefully constructed trap laid out by someone you trusted. In our relationships, there are times when words may seem benign, yet beneath the surface lies a subtle manipulation aimed at controlling your emotions. This is not about overt aggression. It's about the quiet, calculated tactics that slowly erode your self-confidence and autonomy. In my years as a researcher and practitioner of Stoicism, I have come to understand that emotional manipulation is one of the most insidious forms of control. It disguises itself in acts of guilt-tripping love, bombing, gaslighting, and even silence. When these tactics go unchecked, you may find yourself questioning your reality, your self-worth, and even your ability to trust. But here's the empowering truth. Once you recognize these signs, you take back the power over your emotions. You begin to understand that your inner peace belongs solely to you, and that no one should have the power to undermine that. Today I'm sharing with you 10 key signs that someone might be manipulating your emotions without you even realizing it. As we explore each sign, I'll share personal anecdotes, easy-to-understand examples, and practical strategies rooted in Stoic philosophy that have helped me and countless others maintain our emotional independence. By the end of this journey, you'll be equipped not only to identify these subtle manipulations, but also to fortify your inner strength so that your emotions remain firmly under your control. 1. Guilt tripping. One of the most powerful tools in the emotional manipulator's arsenal is guilt. You may have experienced it when someone reminds you of everything you've done, or implies that if you truly cared, you would act a certain way. The manipulator uses phrases like, "After all I've done for you," or "If you really loved me, you would," to twist your sense of responsibility. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate attempt to force you to take responsibility for someone else's emotional well-being, even when that responsibility is not yours to bear. I remember a period when I was in a relationship where every disagreement was quickly followed by a barrage of guilt. If I ever questioned a decision or hesitated about making a change, my partner would remind me of all the sacrifices they claimed to have made on my behalf. Over time, I began to feel as though I was constantly in debt, emotionally obligated to repay them for their kindness. It wasn't until I started journaling my feelings and reflecting on the Stoic teaching that a man should be upright, not be kept upright by others, that I saw the pattern clearly. I realized I was allowing my emotions to be hijacked by guilt. Once I recognized this, I began to set boundaries and assert that my feelings were mine alone. This not only helped me reclaim my inner peace, but also reshaped the relationship into one based on mutual respect. Recognize the tactic. When someone uses guilt as a weapon, note that you are not responsible for managing their emotional state. Set clear boundaries. Calmly explain that your decisions are based on your needs and not on an obligation to ease someone else's guilt. Practice self-reflection. Ask yourself whether you're feeling guilty because you truly did something wrong or because someone is trying to manipulate you. 2. Love bombing. Love bombing involves overwhelming you with affection gifts and attention in order to create an addictive dependency on the manipulator's validation. This tactic creates a roller coaster of emotions. One moment you're riding high on seemingly unconditional love. The next, the affection is abruptly withdrawn, leaving you desperate for more of that initial high. There was a time in my life when I was swept up by someone who appeared to love me unconditionally until they suddenly pulled back. At first, the intensity of their affection made me feel special, like I had found something rare and beautiful. But soon the pattern emerged. The affection was given in such overwhelming doses that I became dependent on it. When it was suddenly retracted, I felt abandoned, confused, and even worthless. The drastic shifts in emotional tone left me questioning my own value. That's when I remembered the Stoic principle that true happiness is found within one's own thoughts, not in the volatile approval of another. I learned to ground myself in my own self-worth, independent of these external highs and lows. Focus on consistency. Ask yourself if the affection you receive is steady or if it fluctuates wildly. Build internal validation. Cultivate a sense of self-worth that doesn't rely on external attention. Keep perspective. Recognize that true love is steady and unchanging, not a series of dramatic highs followed by crushing lows. 3. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a particularly dangerous form of manipulation that makes you question your own memory perceptions or sanity. Phrases like, "that never happened," "you're overreacting," or "you're imagining things" are designed to create doubt in your mind. Over time, this constant self-doubt can make you feel disoriented and unsure of what's real. I once experienced a situation where I began to doubt my own recollection of events. Every time I brought up a concern, my partner dismissed it with a casual remark that made me feel as if I were the one at fault. I found myself questioning my own memory. Was I really misremembering things? The steady erosion of my confidence continued until I started keeping a private journal to record events as they occurred. When I later compared my journal to the version of events my partner presented, the discrepancies were stark. This realization was a turning point. I understood that my feelings of confusion were not a reflection of my own inadequacies, but a manipulation tactic designed to control me. Document your experiences. Keeping a journal or records of conversations can help you trust your own memory. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, acknowledge that feeling without dismissing it. Seek external perspectives. Talk to trusted friends or professionals who can provide objective feedback on your experiences. 4. Withholding information. Manipulators often use withholding information as a way to maintain control. By feeding you only partial truths or deliberately omitting details, they keep you uncertain and dependent on their version of reality. This tactic makes you second-guess your own judgment and forces you to rely on them for clarity. In one relationship, I noticed that whenever I asked for more details about a decision or an event, I received vague or incomplete answers. Initially, I thought I was being overly curious. However, as the pattern repeated, it became clear that I was being kept in the dark, deliberately. The more I pressed, the more evasive the answers became. I eventually realized that this was a tactic to keep me unsure and to consolidate power in their hands. By seeking clarity independently through my own research and reflection, I reclaimed control over my understanding of events and broke free from the manipulative cycle. Ask direct questions. Insist on complete answers in a calm, non-confrontational manner. Do your own research, verify information independently rather than relying solely on one source. Trust in your judgment. Build confidence in your ability to interpret situations without being influenced by partial truths. 5. Triangulation. Triangulation occurs when the manipulator brings in a third party to create conflict or to make you feel insecure. This tactic is designed to pit people against each other and isolate you from your support network. By doing so, the manipulator increases your dependency on them and weakens your overall sense of self-worth. I once encountered a situation where a close friend began comparing me unfavorably to another person, often in the subtle offhand comments during group gatherings. At first, I brushed it off as harmless banter. However, over time, the comparisons became more pointed and frequent, leaving me feeling isolated and doubting my own worth. I soon realized that this wasn't a coincidence. It was a deliberate attempt to create division. I chose to distance myself from that circle and surround myself with people who celebrated my uniqueness rather than undermining it. Avoid comparisons. Remind yourself that your value is not determined by how you stack up against others. Strengthen your support network. Build relationships with those who genuinely support and uplift you. Recognize the tactic. Understand that triangulation is a manipulation strategy designed to make you feel isolated. 6 fake apologies. A true apology involves accountability, empathy, and a commitment to change. When a manipulator offers a so-called apology without any real intention of altering their behavior, it is a tactic meant to silence you without addressing the underlying issue. Phrases like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," are often used to deflect responsibility while leaving the manipulative pattern intact. I vividly recall a time when I was repeatedly hurt by a partner's actions. Every time I confronted them, they would offer an apology that felt empty, lacking any real remorse or willingness to change. It was as if the apology was just a bandage to cover up their recurring behavior. Over time, I learned to see these insincere apologies for what they were, a tactic to placate me temporarily while the pattern continued unabated. Accepting that words alone are not enough, I began to look for real changes in behavior as a sign of genuine remorse. When those changes never came, I knew it was time to protect my emotional well-being. Demand accountability. Look for tangible actions that demonstrate a commitment to change, not just words. Recognize patterns. If the same hurtful behavior recurs, despite apologies, understand that the apologies are insincere. Set clear consequences. Communicate that repeated insincerity will lead to re-evaluating the relationship. 7. Playing the victim. Some manipulators cast themselves as perpetual victims to deflect responsibility and gain sympathy. By portraying themselves as always being wronged, they shift the focus away from their own harmful actions. This tactic makes it difficult for you to hold them accountable, as any criticism is met with an outpouring of self-pity that leaves you feeling guilty for challenging them. I once had a colleague who consistently portrayed every setback as a personal tragedy inflicted by the world around them. Whenever I raised a concern about our work dynamic, they would twist the conversation to emphasize how unfairly they were treated. This constant self-victimization not only stifled any constructive dialogue, but also made me feel as though I was somehow complicit in their suffering. It took a while for me to recognize that their behavior was not a genuine cry for help, but rather a manipulative strategy to avoid taking responsibility. Once I understood this, I learned to remain objective and not let their self-pity derail my own sense of accountability. Maintain objectivity. Separate your own feelings from the manipulator's attempts to shift blame. Encourage responsibility. Gently remind them that growth comes from accepting responsibility for one's actions. Stay grounded in your truth. Do not allow their narrative to undermine your own perception of events. 8. Silent treatment. Silence, when used deliberately to punish or manipulate, can be one of the most emotionally damaging tactics. The silent treatment forces you into a state of anxiety, leaving you desperate for a response or validation. It is not a sign of mature conflict resolution, but rather a cold strategy to assert dominance and control over your emotional state. There was a period when a close friend began to use silence as a way to punish me for minor disagreements. Instead of discussing our issues, they would simply withdraw, leaving me in a limbo of uncertainty. I found myself overanalyzing every interaction, trying to decipher the meaning behind their quiet, only to realize that I was being manipulated into doubting my own worth. That experience was a turning point. I learned that silence should be a tool for reflection, not a weapon for control. I started setting firm boundaries and communicated clearly that if silence was used as punishment, I would no longer tolerate it. Don't chase the silence. Recognize that trying to force communication only plays into the manipulator's hands. Set clear expectations. Communicate that resolving conflicts openly is essential for a healthy relationship. Protect your peace. Choose to disengage from interactions where silence is used to manipulate your emotions. 9. Shifting blame. A manipulator never takes responsibility for their actions. Instead, they shift the blame onto you, making you feel as though you are the cause of every problem. When confronted, they might say, "You made me do this," or twist the facts so that you end up feeling guilty for their missteps. This shifting of blame is a deliberate tactic to evade accountability and maintain control over the narrative. I recall an instance at work where a project went awry. Instead of addressing the issues head-on, one of my colleagues systematically shifted the blame onto me. Every meeting turned into a session where I was subtly forced to accept fault, even though I had contributed diligently. At first I doubted myself and questioned if I had indeed made an error. But as the pattern became clear, I realized that the blame was being shifted to disarm any criticism of their own shortcomings. I learned to stand firm in my own truth, refusing to accept undue blame, and this helped me maintain my professional integrity. Stand your ground. Be clear about your own contributions, and don't let others rewrite the narrative. Document your work. Keep records of your responsibilities and actions, so you have evidence to support your case. Trust in your integrity. Know that if you are doing your best, you need not accept the false blame others try to impose. 10 Fear and Threats. Fear is one of the most powerful tools in a manipulator's arsenal. They may use subtle threats, implied consequences, or even raised voices to instill fear and keep you in a state of submission. Whether it's fear of abandonment, rejection, or punishment, the goal is the same: to control your behavior by making you feel unsafe emotionally or mentally. I once knew someone who would casually imply that if I didn't act a certain way, they might need space or rethink things. At first, I didn't realize how much power these statements held over me. But slowly, I began to notice how my decisions were no longer based on what I truly wanted, but rather on avoiding potential emotional consequences. That's when I turned back to Stoic teachings. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. I began to recognize that fear was being used to cloud my judgment and to keep me compliant. By confronting that fear, challenging its power, and grounding myself in reason, I was able to reclaim my autonomy. Challenge the threats. Ask yourself whether the consequences you're afraid of are real or constructed by the manipulator. Respond with calm confidence. Don't let fear dictate your decisions. Ground your response in logic, not emotion. Strengthen inner security. Build self-trust so that external pressure can no longer shake your resolve. After exploring these 10 subtle signs of emotional manipulation, let's consolidate the insights into clear, actionable lessons. Guilt. Tripping manipulators use guilt to bind you to their emotional needs. Recognize that you are not responsible for managing someone else's feelings. Love bombing. Overwhelming displays of affection can create dependency only to be followed by withdrawal. True love is consistent and steady. Gaslighting. Do not allow anyone to make you doubt your own reality. Trust your memory, document your experiences, and seek clarity. Withholding information. When you're kept in the dark, you lose your ability to make informed decisions. Always seek complete truth. Triangulation. If someone uses others to create conflict or insecurity, recognize that it is a strategy to divide and control. Fake apologies. Insincere words without actions are designed to placate you without real change. Playing the victim. Beware of those who use self-pity to deflect accountability. True responsibility is the hallmark of emotional maturity. Silent treatment. Withholding communication is not a mature conflict resolution method, but a tool for manipulation. Your peace should never be held hostage. Shifting blame. Stand firm in your truth and refuse to absorb responsibility for others' actions. Fear and threats. Manipulators often use fear to keep you dependent. Recognize that fear is their tool, not yours, and choose to live free from its chains. Betrayals, manipulations, and subtle emotional traps can slowly erode our sense of self. The beauty of Stoic philosophy is that it empowers you to take full control of your inner world. Instead of allowing others to dictate your feelings, you learn to recognize these tactics, detach from their hold, and reclaim your power. Reflect on the moments when you felt guilted into submission, overwhelmed by sudden affection, followed by cold withdrawal, or confused by inconsistent messages that make you question your reality. These are not signs of your inadequacy. They are signals that someone is trying to control you. When you learn to identify these patterns, you can set healthy boundaries, foster emotional resilience, and trust in your own judgment. In my own journey, adopting a Stoic mindset has been transformative. I began to understand that my emotions belong solely to me, and that true power lies in the ability to remain calm, clear, and steadfast even when external forces attempt to destabilize you. By integrating these practices into your life, you create a strong inner fortress, one that no one can easily penetrate with guilt, deceit, or manipulation. You become the master of your emotions, the guardian of your peace, and the architect of a life filled with genuine, respectful relationships. Recognizing emotional manipulation is the first step toward reclaiming your power. Through the lens of Stoicism, we learn that our inner world is ours to command. Boundaries are your shield, self-respect is your compass, calmness is your weapon. Thank you for joining me on this in-depth exploration of emotional manipulation and the Stoic principles that can help you overcome it. I invite you to share your own stories and experiences. Let's continue to learn from each other and grow in our journey toward true emotional sovereignty. Stay strong, stay stoic, and above all, trust in the power of your own truth.